Welcome to Grit, the Real Estate Growth Mindset podcast, hosted by Brian Charlesworth, founder of Sisu. Sisu provides growth automation software for real estate. You'll hear stories from real estate thought and technology leaders, team owners, and brokers on how they grew their business in a rapidly changing industry. You'll learn how to transform your brokerage and teams into a high-performing and analytics-driven business so you have a new, durable, competitive advantage against disruption in your market. So let's get right into it.
All right, everyone. Hey, welcome back to the Grit Podcast. I'm Brian Charlesworth, the founder of Sisu and the host of the show. And I am really excited today to have this guest on the show. I've been wanting to talk to Louie for a couple of months now because he recently sold his business. So today we are here with Louie Hamner. Louie has been a partner of my wife Springs for many years on the title side of the business. He's the founder of Vanguard Title, again, which recently sold. Hopefully we can dive into that information. And Louie has also been one that's always been focused on inspiring people. So he comes in and talks to people and gets them all excited about things, and truly been a motivational speaker, I think at a national level at this point, Louie. He's also ventured into a new area of breathwork, which I'm excited to learn more about. And so anyway, Louie, welcome to the show today. What would you like to add to that?
Nothing. That's it. Just that I'm been married 26 years and I got 3 kids that I love and a wife that I love.
Okay, great. That's always good to have a wife that you love. And
Yes.
After 26 years, a lot of people lose that. So congratulations on 26 years.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But
All right.
yeah,
All right. So starting out, Louie, why don't you give us a little bit about your background? Because I remember I went on a trip with you down to St. George one weekend, and I got to learn a lot about your background that I didn't know from your childhood. And I think that plays into who you are today. So can you give us a little background about just your life growing up?
Yeah. So interesting enough today is that my dad passed away in 2015, and today's his birthday. So it's just kind of,
Oh, wow.
yeah. Anyway, but my family, so I grew up in Indiana. I was born in Nashville, Tennessee. I don't even remember living there, but grew up in Indiana in a farming community with 13 kids in my family. And
13 kids. Now, how did this happen? I mean, like most people listening to this show can't even comprehend 13 kids, including myself. So,
so my dad always says that when they would have prayer for dinner or before going to bed or whatever, family prayer, that he always felt like there was somebody missing. And he's just like, where are all the kids? And he'd count them. And he's just like, no, somebody's not here. And
wow.
And obviously my mom obliged to that, like she agreed with that. And so I'm number 11. There's 2 younger than me. And, once they had my brother, who was the youngest, he said he never felt that again. Like he would count the kids, like, yep, everybody's here. He's like, it just never, so it was like that feeling is what stirred the desire for another kid, So anyway, that's how that happened. Like,
well, and thankfully it happened since you were number 11, because in most families, you wouldn't have been born, right?
100%. Yeah. That's right. So thankfully for that feeling, because after 10 kids, you're like, or, 9, I think it was after 9 kids, they were really thinking, are we done or is it not? Anyway, I grew up in Indiana, and the first house that I can remember living in, I think we lived there till about 6 or 7, that there was 2, technically 3 bedrooms, but really like the washer dryer where that was a bedroom. And then there was a bedroom, and then there was where my parents were in. So, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and then we had an outhouse. And so I grew up like first 6-7 years of my life, you used the outhouse. That was just, I don't know, it was crazy. But thinking about it, when I think about it, like it was just common. It's like, yeah, that's what you do.
That's what you knew, right?
That's just what I knew, In fact, anyway, so like that's how I grew up. And I rarely can ever remember not being on some type of assistance from church or something where we just grew up really poor. I remember not realizing how poor we were, but just recognizing that we didn't have stuff. was like, for example, the starter went out on my dad's car and we couldn't afford to buy a new starter, which at the time was, I don't know, $17 or $3 or something, whatever it was. And anyway, so he had to jumpstart, we'd have to get up in the morning, push his car, get him to pop the clutch and then go to work. And I remember one day asking my dad, like, how do you get home? Like, who does this? Like, we do this for you to get to work. What do you do? And he said, oh, there's a hill that I park on. That's about, I think it was about a quarter mile, maybe a half mile away from work. And he would park on that. It was a really steep hill. And then he would just coast it and pop. But just like on Karate Kid, it was like, when Karate Kid came out, I'm like, yes, that is exactly what you do. You have to pop the clutch.
Thankfully, he knew how to pop his clutch and start it and not ever kill his car when he was driving with the clutch, right?
Yeah. And I joke around with my kids because we had this one car that, no lie, like the brake would not come back. If you pushed the brake in, it wouldn't come back up. So you had a rope on the brake to pull it back up. We had a screwdriver that was in the turn signal because the turn signal had broken off. So we put a screwdriver in there. So if you wanted to go, so left, you'd push it down, the screwdriver, because then you have to pull it out and then pop it back up. You're pulling the rope. I'm not joking. You're pulling the rope because you got to pump the brake and it's a stick shift. And my kids are like, well, how did you drive that? I'm like, I'm a Jedi. It's a pod racing. Like that like from a kid, like that was it, Anyway.
So you grew up as a kid, not having a lot of money. And so at what point in your life did you decide, hey, this is not how I want to live? Like, this is not the life I want.
Yes. In the 7th grade, I remember thinking, I couldn't wait to work so I could get money. I just thought about it because I remember asking my parents, when I was in the 5th grade, when can I start working detasseling corn? Or they're like, farmers won't hire you because you're too weak. You're too little. There's nothing you can really do. They're like, you're going to have to wait till you're like in the 8th or 9th grade. And so the summer from 6th grade to 7th grade, I started catching. I found this whole story behind this. But the bottom line is I got introduced to this company that would pay you to catch fireflies. And so in the summer of the 6th grade, I started catching fireflies for a penny a firefly. And then they'd give you this special canister to mail them to. And anyway, and just started doing that. And I got to catching 50 a night to 100 a night to 200 a night. So this is in 1982, 83. And we lived out in the middle of nowhere, right? There's like nowhere, like Field of Dreams nowhere. Just like we're 10 miles from a grocery store or 12 miles from, 8 to 1, but that one was not very good. It was hardly anything. But if you want to go to a real grocery store, we were 15 miles to a grocery store.
I've heard so many stories about kids doing paper routes or mowing lawns. And, I grew up doing some of that, at least on the mowing lawn side, but I've never heard catching fireflies. But it's such a great story. And I think it leads to this. Like, I look at kids today. I don't know many kids that are saying, when can I start working? Right. It's just a completely different culture.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people would look at that and go, I can't believe he grew up with those challenges, although tons of people grow up with those kinds of challenges.
Exactly.
And now it's like, okay, look where you've come. And I think a lot of times, some of the most successful people grow up in that type of environment and decide that's not how they want to live.
Yeah. And that's what did it for me, because it was kind of interesting that you say that, because again, like I said, it took me about a month or two. But at first I was catching 50 a night, 75, then I got 75. Then I maxed out about 150, but it only take me an hour, make $1.50 an hour in 1982. Like that was pretty good money, right? Tax free. Anyway, but it got to a point where I could literally I could go out into the woods, into this thick woods that got dark an hour earlier before it even started getting dark, out in the field, right? Anyway, so it got to be, I was catching 1,000 a night, which in 1982, I was making $10 in an hour and 45 minutes, which was minimum wage was like $2.25. I was making $10. And at one point, so here I am in the 6th grade, that's why I say from the 6th grade on, like I paid for my own school books to go to school. I paid for my own clothes. I bought my own stuff from 6th grade on. And, but I was making, I remember at the end of that summer in the 6th grade, I had a couple $100, like in a couple $100, $270, something like that. That was a lot of money.
Yeah.
I remember my dad asking if he could borrow $50 so he could put tires on the car. I'm in 6th, 7th grade.
Yeah.
So like it was, anyway, so that like, I realized that it's funny anyway, that when I got into the title business and not knowing anything, is I realized that I kind of had literally followed almost that same pattern. If I were to tell you details of the story of like what I went through to catch fireflies, I realized like I did the same thing in my business. It was just, so it was really, so when you say that, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I did the same thing.
So fast forwarding, first, how did you get to Utah? Second, how did you end up in the title industry? And were there things between, like, how did you end up in the title business?
So I got fired from Fidelity Investments. Long story, but it was mostly a political thing that they had this thing called a career limiting move, a CLM. They're like, you committed a CLM. And it was just like, it was terminology.
You went to work for Fidelity Investments. Did you go to college?
I had graduated. Yeah, I graduated. So I went to work for Fidelity in 2000, September of 2000.
Okay.
Then we had our first baby in December of 2000. And then in May 28th, 2003, well, actually, I quit. There was a number of people that did this thing that Fidelity did not like, even though it wasn't.
So what is it? What is this CLM, Louie? What did you do?
Yeah.
It was that career limiting move.
So what it was is they had, it's called a charitable gift fund. And any employee, if you put 10 grand into that charitable gift fund, Fidelity would match it 75%, give you $7,500, right? But in the agreement and all of that, it didn't say that the income had to be W-2 income. It just said the money has to come from your account. So like that was not in the rule, right? So I took that handbook, I took it to my accounting professor. I said, listen, if my parents or my brother gifted me 10 grand because it's possible in the IRS code, and if I took it and put it into my bank account and I put it in there, and it's really their money, but they gifted it to me, and I take the tax deduction, am I breaking any rule according to what this is? And I took it to my accounting professor at UVU, and he says, no, you found a loophole. No, you can totally do it. It doesn't say it has to be W-2 income or whatever, right? And so that's what I did. And then they came back. And so I was telling all these people to do it because it was a benefit. And they came back and they were like angry. They're like, we know that this didn't violate the rule, but you weren't looking out for Fidelity's best interest. You should have told corporate so they could change it. You should have done this and you should have done that. And you're not a team player. And I'm like, it's a benefit. Like, I just followed the rule, They were angry because they did not anticipate so many people doing that.
Yeah, I'm sure they didn't. They just expected to match a small portion of people's income.
Yeah, they said, we did not anticipate people making less than 50 grand, this many people to donate this much money. And you guys are all LDS, and that. So you can push this money to missions or whatever you guys do and all this stuff. I mean, they flew out 2 attorneys from Boston and grilled me for like 4 hours. And I said, wow. What did I do wrong? He's like, you weren't looking after the best interest. I'm like, wow.
Very interesting.
It was so interesting.
Okay.
So interesting. Anyway.
Okay. So you got fired, and what was your next move?
Well, I got fired and I didn't know what to do. And so I found this job offer as an escrow officer for a title company and talked to my buddy about it who owned a title company. And he's like, you should go do it. And my wife was a little worried because it was sales. And she's like, you've tried 2 other sales jobs and you quit within a week. She's like, you were not good at sales. You're shy. I did door-to-door sales for alarm systems, and I hated it. And plus I hated dogs. And I'm like, not only do I hate sales, but like, it was good money. It was just, potentially good money, but I hated people's dogs. Anyway, she's like, are you sure you're going to do this? I'm like, what else do I got? We have nothing. And
what I love, Louie, is you've never been afraid to fail, right? That's why this is the Grit podcast, right? It's like everybody fails, but the grit to move on. That's the challenge that we all have in life, like to keep going and just have a vision and focus on execution.
Yeah, I realized like it's so interesting that this is on my dad's birthday because my dad grew up on a farm. My grandma would tell me this story all the time because my dad is like most people's grandpa. My mom is 90. My mom will be 92 this year. So my dad, anyway, my grandma would always tell me how my grandpa had a mechanical tractor, then had a horse, had a Clydesdale that pulled a plow. And from the time that my dad was 6 years old, my grandpa built a box on this plow and he would sit on this rock in the box and hold the harness to a Clydesdale. I mean, a Clydesdale, right? Like that horse is ginormous. Mm-hmm. And she was like, I thought every day that your dad would die because all it needed was a snake to spook it. And I thought he would die. And so my dad, his work was so hard at home that he ran away to join the military because he's like, military is easy compared to home life, you know? Anyway, so my dad like just didn't let us get out of doing something just because it was hard. Like he didn't care. Like if it broke, he didn't care. I remember my brother broke his arm and we were cutting wood. My brother goes, I can't. He had broken his arm at a different thing, but he's like, Dad, I can't carry wood because I broke my arm. He's like, you can carry wood. Pick it up. He's like, your arm is dangling. He's like, just pick it up. That grit that you're talking about, like, although I hated my dad being so merciless, I guess, you know, just such a slave driver in that, I realized like, no matter what was happening, it didn't give me an excuse to say, I can't do it, you know?
Yeah.
So what happened, so interestingly enough, I got into this job in the title business and I hated it. The first place I worked at was just terrible. Honestly, it was like terrible environment. Everybody was hating each other, all this backbiting and all this stuff. And I didn't realize it, but for like 4 or 5 weeks in a row, I got sick on a Sunday night. Felt like I couldn't go to work on Monday. Then my wife goes, Viv says, you've been sick every Sunday for the last 4 weeks. You're not sick. You hate your job. I was physically sick. I thought I was going to like throw up, you know?
Very, very observant of her, right?
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting is that, so my dad was so like, no, you just do your freaking job and shut up and get it done. So I was so used to like just holding it in. I just thought I was sick. I had no idea that I was anxious. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. You're just like, you're just holding it in. Anyway, so I just thought I can't do this anymore because I felt like crying. Just like, I just can't. When she said that, I'm like, you're right. Like, I wish you hadn't said it because now I feel picked on, you know? And anyway, so I called my dad and I never asked my dad for advice because I already knew what his advice was going to be. Like as a kid, what are you crying about? Either stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about, or I'll give you something more to cry about. Then you'll stop crying about whatever you're crying about before.
Yeah.
Like that's his.
Give you something real to cry about.
Yeah. Let me. Yeah. That's right. So I called my dad and I was actually nervous because I was super, if I told my dad I didn't want to do something, or he'd be like, what is the matter? You get up there, you do that, you know, whatever it was. Anyway, so I called him and I just told him, I said, Dad, Viv just noticed like I get sick. I thought I was getting sick. I said, I don't know what to do because I hate this job. I'm like, I didn't tell him this, but we were on welfare at the time. Like I was only I had 2 kids. Viv wasn't working. And I was literally on WIC, like food stamps. And I didn't ask anybody for money, but we qualified for WIC. And Viv's like, I know we're not going to ask, but we qualified for WIC. I'm going to do that. And I'm like, okay. I still didn't want to tell anybody, you know?
Yeah.
And so I called him up and said, what do I do? I don't know what to do. And I was waiting for him to like, shut the hell up and just go to work and figure it out, you know, this kind of stuff. And he said, if you quit today and you went to go work for another title company, could you do that job? What's your job again? I'm like, escrow officer. He's like, could you actually go do that job at another company right now? And I said, no, I don't think so. Like, maybe I could, but I don't believe I can. Maybe, I don't know, maybe. And he goes, here's the deal. You hating it this bad will drive you to learn it. And the minute you know that you can quit and go do it someplace else, then quit. But this is like an education for you. He's like, this is like getting your degree. You're getting a degree in this area. Learn it the best you can. Figure it out, whatever it takes. Work your ass off. Do all of this. And then when you have it down, quit. Because I promise somebody does it better. Somebody's created a company like that somewhere in Utah where it's not all this bickering, where it's not chaotic, where people aren't fighting. He goes, so that's what you need to do. Don't quit until you can do it someplace else.
That's great advice.
Yeah. And I was just like, as opposed to like, yeah, you're getting picked on, or get the hell out of there, they don't deserve you, or, that kind of stuff. And I look back on it, and today I'm like, if I didn't call him, which I was very scared to do, like I just nervous, like, what's he going to say? And I was like, if I didn't call him, I would have just probably quit.
So how long did it take before you quit? How long did it take you to learn how to be an escrow officer?
So that was like in September. I think that was about September. And then I never quit. So in December, I was going to quit. And then they gave me a $10,000 pay raise on December 14th, 2003. And the only reason I remember this is because 1 month later, on January 14th, 2004, I got fired from that company. And I remember asking Douglas Farr, who fired me. He was the CEO of the company. And I said, why are you firing me? And he's like, you know why? If I have to tell you, that's another reason why we're firing you. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding, man. Like, what did I do? And then he just says, we thought you would be a rock star in this industry and you're not. We thought you would crush it and you're not. So we're going to fire you. And when I went home that day, I came home early and Viv goes, how come you're home early? And I'm like, I got fired. And she goes, that's impossible. No way. She goes, you work way too hard. There's no way. She goes, there's no way you get fired 2 times in 7 months. That is not possible. And I'm like, yeah, no, I got fired. She was like, you're kidding. And she's still doing whatever in the kitchen or something. And it wasn't until I started crying that she believed me. I'm like, no, I really got fired. I started crying. And she's like, oh my gosh, this is for real. What is happening right now? It was terrible.
So obviously that was a message sent to you, right? I mean, maybe you weren't meant to work for other people, Louie. So You're sitting there getting fired and you're thinking, the second time in 7 months, what am I going to do? What kind of thoughts went through your head? Like when you start thinking about, okay, what's my next option?
I really my head was just spinning. I was just so hurt by it, because I guess I'm destined to, I just thought I'm going to repeat how I grew up. Because this is what happened. My dad was more stubborn. That was his thing. He was very stubborn, very no, I'm not going to do, very prideful. And so there were a couple times he got fired because he's like, hell no, I'm not going to do that. Get somebody else to do it or whatever. And they're like, you're out of here. And he's like, I don't care. That kind of thing, so then I thought, I'm not being that. Honestly, it crushed me. And I didn't want to go back into the title business because I thought if that's what it is, then forget it. Because it was a bad place to work.
Did you ever start enjoying it once you learned it?
I did. But what happened was I had a client call me up and say, hey, you were one of the best escrow officers I've ever used. I know you only been doing it for a few months, but you were amazing. You have a gift for this. I don't know why they fired you. And she was like, just go get a job at another title company and I'll send you my business. And I'll get the people that were sending you business, they'll follow you. And so for a couple of days, I'm like, no. And I tried to get a job at Geico as a claims adjuster. Literally, I remember this, applying for it. And they're like, and they would ask me, what happened to your previous job? I'm like, how do you say that? I got fired. And the previous one, I got fired, but I promise you want to hire me. I promise, how do you say that? So anyway, I got a job at a title company that was they hired me and it was straight commission. Just if I brought a deal in, they would pay me. If I didn't, they no skin off their nose if I wasn't any good. Right.
But more upside, right? I mean, if you're
way more upside,
commission,
way more upside. So I figured out I only had to do 18 deals where I was making more money than I was making before, only on 18 deals. And I was closing 35 at the other place. And anyway, so I thought I could do this. And I even remember going on a hike with my friend saying, do you think I could do this? Do you think I could be at sales? And he's like, people like you. You're likable. I'm like, really? And I'll never forget this. Kenny Triumpha is his name. And he goes, dude, I can't believe you think so little of yourself. You're likable. People like you. And I'm like, man, when you get fired twice, you just seem like nobody likes you. He goes, no, people will like you. So anyway, I got that job and I didn't like it. I didn't like it because I wanted something prestigious. Like I wanted a job that people, when you said what you did, they're like, whoa. And in my mind, I wanted to be like an FBI agent, something like that. Like if I said I was a federal agent, they'd be like, dude, federal agent, So I worked at that title company and I started making really good money. After 6 months, I was on track to making more money. Double. After 6 months there, I was on track to make double the income I had made the previous year. And I could not believe it. Previous year, I made like 32,000 and I was going to make like 67,000 this year. Something like that. Roughly, those are the numbers. And even though I was making more money, I hated it that people would say, I'd go to church or in the neighborhood, they'd say, oh, you're a title guy. And I'm like, I hate that title. I do not want to be a title guy. Like I want to be FBI, CIA, 007 or something, anyway. And I applied for the FBI and I wasn't smart enough to do that. They're like, we don't need you. If you spoke Arabic, you'd be in. And I applied to the DEA, and actually the DEA, after 8 to 10 months, they're like, we want you. But by then I was on track to make like 120 in 2005.
And what would have you made working for the DEA?
I remember it was total. The base salary was $43,000. But then if you add up all the benefits in the first year, right, it would be like the matching and stuff. It was going to be like 50 something. So I was going to take like a 50% pay cut. And then the highest I would make then they said, but you'd have to move around the country and all this stuff. And the most you'd make is like 75,000 a year or something like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, even the most I would make, I'm making more.
Yeah.
And Viv always said from her, she had a boss that always said to her, never let your pride cost you money. Like never let your pride cost you money. It's not worth it. And she's like, you're letting your pride cost you money. You want this title, but she's like, I just want to do whatever you think is going to make you happy, but you're making more money than you would ever make. And potentially we don't know what you could make in the next year, So I end up staying and just figuring out like, how do I kept thinking like, what do I have to do in this job that I would be happy in it? What do I have to experience to be happy in it? And so it was interesting is that during this whole time, I didn't mention this, but this is so important because during this whole time when I would close people, I'd close their loans as a title person, as an escrow officer. Every time we got to the 1003, I would ask everybody this question. And I remember keeping track, like thinking, I've asked 2,800 people this question. I'd ask them, what do you do for a living? Because you can see how much they make right off the 1003. Like I would see how much they make. So I had an idea of what they would make. And then I'd say, what do you do for a living? Do you love it? And how did you get that job? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like now I didn't keep track, but I can tell you this. Here's what I learned after why I stayed was because of this, because I asked that question all along. And here's what I learned. If I wasn't going to be a doctor, like a scientist, a hard science, if I wasn't going to do a hard science, a school teacher, and that means like psychology of science or something like that, engineering, something where you have to have a degree. You literally, if you don't have a degree, you're not doing it. So if you do not want to do anything with a hard science, then you did not pick your career. It just showed up. You figured it out. Mm-hmm. You didn't pick it. You loved what you did, or you don't love what you do and you do something and you stuck it for the money. A lot of people are making good money. They're like, I hate my job. In fact, but I hate it.
You realize you weren't the only one in this world that didn't love your job.
Oh my gosh. Most everybody hated their job. And the only people that didn't hate their job had nothing to do with money. Or I'm sorry, the people that loved their job, it had nothing to do with money. It's just that they saw and understood that they chose it and that it fulfilled them.
Yeah. And they were passionate about it.
Yeah,
right?
They chose it. And so I thought there's nothing in a hard science that I want to do, or like a fireman or a police officer or military, right? Like active service of some type of public service, or that I'm like, I don't want to do any of those things. So I thought I'm going to have to, I didn't do the DEA. I actually took the ASVAB test. I was thinking about joining the military because I'm like, that's a path of getting into the CEA or the FBI or the CIA is going in the military. Anyway, I just came to this realization that I'm not going to do any of those things. I just have to figure out what I love and how I bring what I love into what I do. Because I'm not passionate about title, but I got to figure that out, what I can bring in. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So when did you start Vanguard Title?
I started that, and that was in 2015. I started my own title company in 2012. Well, I went from that. I started my own office in 2007 of Atlas, 2005. So a year and a half into this business, I opened my own branch of Atlas Title, which is with my buddy here on 45th South. And then I did that from 05 to 2012. And then in 2012, I created Magellan, doing it on my own. And then in 2015, I merged with Keystone Title to create Vanguard Title.
Okay. So you really started your own business in 2012.
Well, I mean, yes and no. From 2005 in my own branch, I did all of it myself.
Yeah.
Like, I just had his name.
I see.
I did my own marketing, my own hiring, like all of it. I was the escrow officer, manager, marketer. Like I did the whole, anyway.
If you've been enjoying Grit, please help us continue to grow the channel by leaving a 5-star review and sharing it with a friend. Now back to Grit.
Okay, so here you are, you're building this title business. So I guess really from 05 to 12. And then you merged, was it 15? You merged and built Magellan.
Keystone.
So what was your thought process around why you wanted to come together with another business? And it wasn't like an acquisition, if I recall. It was more just like, hey, we're going to build our businesses together.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. One, I realized that, I was strung out. One, I was getting like everything I was doing was like I was redlining every day, just like I remember telling Viv, like, I can't remember the last time I'm happy. Like I see kids and they're happy. It's not that I'm not happy. Like I'm not grateful. I'm not, but I'm just not like happiness is the present moment. It's just being like, I'm just sitting here and man, I can hear the air conditioning going and just like, I'm so happy, just being in that moment. Like I can't remember, like literally, I'm like, I'm not happy. I'm excited. I'm enthusiastic. I'm hardworking, but happiness, you ask me to sit still for 5 minutes. I'm like, impossible. Cause there's something I have to be doing. Like there's an obligation, And secondly, is that we had really grown so fast at Magellan that there were rumors that I was doing something illegal to get business. And my underwriters came in and talked to me. They're like, how are you getting so much business so fast? And I'm like, we're just good at marketing. Like we just work hard. And so there was all these things that saying I was doing something wrong. And I'm like, how do I get past the belief of like, literally, that's what, and I had hired some people and then they would not show up because they would think that they would hear this rumor that I was doing illegal activity. That's the only way I could be doing so much business. And so because I couldn't recruit talent, I'm like, how do I overcome that? Because we were, it was sloppy. Like it was hard because we would get so much business and we couldn't manage it.
Yeah.
And so I met Jeff Poulton at Keystone Title and we started talking and I thought, man, if I merged with him and he's respected, he's got a law degree from Chicago law, like people know he would not do illegal stuff. And then he had all these ideas and I thought, man, like, so that's what like made me think of it. Like I gotta rebrand or something.
Yeah. And you're like, and I can help you grow. You can give me.
And so we sat and talked and I'm like, dude, this synergy, if we came together, like, dude, you're good at that part of it. I'm good at this part of it. It gets rid of the thought that I'm doing something illegal. And even when we merged, to be honest, I mean, we had underwriters that sent us letters of cancellation saying, we think you're doing something illegal. And then 2 weeks later, they came back and they're like, okay, you're not, we'll underwrite you. We're sorry. We believe the rumors. But like, that is how bad it was. So It wasn't like, I'm not making up in my head. We got cancellation letters. And then once we merged and they saw that, and then that synergy started happening, like, and it was hard to get that going, but that synergy of Jeff being really good at understanding how to structure a business, the structure of the things, and like he's super savvy in that. Like that's stuff that I would just half-ass. I'm like, I don't know. We do this, we do that. Hopefully that works out. We'll see what happens. But so that merger was honestly, when you talk about having experienced something really bad and then making it happen, that was amazing. Like I was.
Yeah. So it was, I think, Louie, it was probably 3 years ago, probably something, maybe 4, that you and I went to St. George for a weekend. And
yeah. So in 2016, we're at Date with Destiny with you.
Yeah. Which is where we met you. So
it was like 17. It was like 17.
Yeah. So we met there and then got to spend a little time with you. And I remember that weekend, like you had your business, you were doing well, but like you hadn't reached this, right?
Mhm.
There were still challenges. And I mean, every company has its challenges, but you were talking about a lot of challenges that you were, had experienced and been through and people leaving you. And I remember you specifically telling me how much money you were making at that time. And
I can't remember. You made me curious of where I can't remember what I said.
So I believe it was 250.
Yeah, that's right.
And so what was the journey from there to here? Because I mean, you spent a long time getting to there and, overcame a lot of challenges and getting fired and having people say you're doing stuff illegal. And now to have just sold your business. Tell us how you went from that to selling your business and like what created this? Because that's a big gap. Like you filled a big gap in a short time frame.
Yeah. I get emotional thinking about this because I get emotional thinking about it because the thing that, I can't even say this. I remember believing that if I played full out, if I was giving my all, I started creating this limiting belief that it would just create my people, it would make them grow faster, and then they would just grow and faster and just lead me faster. And what I realized that what I was doing wrong, I had to unbelieve that. And one of the things that, kind of came to me that my limiting belief is literally my real belief. The truth is the exact opposite of my limiting belief. I remember writing this down at UPW, just like figuring this out, going, oh my gosh, I wrote down, if I play full out, I'll just help my people grow faster and they'll lead me faster. Mm-hmm. And then I thought, and I was sitting there at UPW, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the exact opposite. If I play full out, they will never want to leave me because they'll love and grow so much, they will recognize they'll never grow as much as they're growing with me. Mm-hmm. And that is what will keep them here. Yeah. I remember being at UPW, just like, you jumping up and down and all this stuff. And I'm like, no, that is it. Now I have to figure it out. What is that like? Or what does it mean?
So how do you grow faster than the business grows so that you can keep inspiring them and helping them grow at that same pace?
So what I realized is that's when I came across Brene Brown, and she talked. And so it's such an unlikely avenue, a branch, of a twist of events, right? A turn of whatever. But I realized that I didn't really love the people that I worked with. I wasn't as vested in them as I thought I was. And no matter how hard I worked, when they say people is so freaking cliche, but they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Like we say it so fast, so cliche. But what I realized is that true caring, and I learned this through Brene Brown, like empathy. And I can say empathy, and I was telling this to a business owner the other day. I'm like, when I say empathy, that's the key. He's like, okay, yeah, I got it. That makes sense. I'm like, no. If you think you know empathy, I promise you don't know it. The fact that you think you know it, you 100% have no idea what it means. I'm like, you do not know, because I've studied it. I've read it. For years. And anyway, so it was like I came across her and really took a deep dive into what she taught. And I realized I wasn't having conversations like she talks about. It's having conversations like what do you need to work on and what goal do we need to set, all the stuff that I wasn't having the conversations that she expressed or talked about in her books and on the audios and stuff. And what I found is that the more I practiced empathy and took this deeper dive into it, it inspired the person, the people that I worked with. It inspired them to work harder than they've ever worked, to dig deeper. It gave them permission to get more rejection, gave them permission to do things wrong more. It gave them permission to be able to come back, not winning in an appointment, but knowing that they're still loved. And that they knew that if I could say this, but here's what, they knew that I gave a shit. And they're like, you really give a shit. That's why I stay, because you actually do. We're talking about my kids during the coaching meeting. We talked about my kid and how to better his grades. That's all we talked about. And I remember one employee saying, why are you doing this? What does this have to do with anything with title? And I said, you're going to feel better when you go home, when you're able to help your son do that. They said, 100%. I said, and are you going to sleep better? They're like, yes. I said, honestly, I'm really selfish. They're like, how so? I'm like, because you're going to go home. Are you going to feel better? Yes. Are you going to sleep better? Yes. Are you going to come into work more enthusiastically? Yes. That's why I did it. I'm like, honest, I'm more selfish than what you think. But I know that if I don't solve your most immediate thing that's draining your energy, that where you're leaking, the energy that I think that you should have and the passion, enthusiasm you should have for your work, when it's not there, whatever's draining, whatever's on your mind, I don't care what it is, that's what I have to solve. Because when I can solve that, you want to come work, you want to make more money, you want to look good, you want to help your clients, but you just don't have the energy or the patience or, the presence of mind to do any of that in this moment because your dumb teenager is stressing you out,
Yeah.
So I'm like, let's figure that out. Like, bring him in. I'll talk to him. They're like, will you talk to him? I'm like, sure, give me his number. I'll call him. You're going to call my kid and talk. Yeah, 100%. They're like, great.
That's
what I mean?
awesome.
Like, so it's like, that is what I realized. That's what really changed. And then when that would happen, then they knew that when they would get recruited from other places, they'd say, who's going to talk to my kid? This guy that wants me to work for him, he's not going to talk to my kid. Forget that. Like, and then it just changed everything. But that took 15, 16, 17, 18. That took 4 years of really dialing that in, of doing that. Took 4 years of doing that before I really started seeing a payoff, started like financially that it really paid off.
Yeah. Okay. So with the shortage of time, Louie, and this, I tell you, I could talk to you for days. I love hearing your stories. Maybe just quickly, like, why did you guys decide to sell the business? I believe you actually went through a process and decided to sell the business, right?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, my business partner, that's what I'm saying, Jeff is so smart. Like, I'm like, he's just brilliant, but we were talking one day and he says, hey, I think we should hire some consultants to really help us like get our business in tip top shape, right? Like, really just dial us in. Like, what are we doing? What are our, if we ever decided to sell in the next 10 years, like, you sell at the highest multiple and get the most out of EBITDA, because we just really like dial that in.
Yes.
So like, okay, let's start. He's like, so let's just do it now. So that way we're doing it for 10 years. Because we literally had no plans of selling. We had 3 buyers approach us, and private equity firm, and we're a couple of underwriters were like, no way, we're not doing it. We had no intention because we had just dialed in. I'm like, I literally love it now. Like, I'm not going to sell it when I love it, And so anyway, then we started going through that process. And then shortly after that, we weren't even done. We were just in the beginning of that, really. We got approached by Fidelity in August. Yeah, like mid-August. And
of 2021.
2021. Yeah. Jeff called me and says, hey, Fidelity talked to us or called me and said they want to go to lunch. I'm like, he said, do you want to go? I'm like, dude, we're not selling. Why would I go? He goes, yeah, it's a good point. Nah, whatever, I'll do it. Anyway, so a couple weeks later, he called me up and said, hey, they want to be serious. Like, they might be serious about making us an offer, almost like maybe they might make us one we can't refuse. I'm like, Jeff, there's no way I get fired by Fidelity Investments. And then Fidelity Title. I go, Fidelity Investments fired me, got me into this business. And then you think Fidelity Title is going to get me into it, out of it. But anyway, so we met with them, and what they had to offer us as far as being more competitive was incredible. They really wanted in. They really wanted in Utah because Utah was like the only non-attorney state that they were not in, that they didn't have a footprint in. They really wanted it in. And
it's interesting. Utah is very... and if I go anywhere else in the country, all these big companies are in there, and you go to Utah and it's just all these independent, small companies, right?
Yeah. That's exactly right. And so it was crazy. But what it made me realize is that what they had, I would never have looked at it, but what they offered was advantages to being more competitive. The culture would not change. I mean, structurally, there's things we got to do differently and whatnot, but like the culture and meetings and however we have been winning, that's how we're going to continue to win. And then just felt like it was time for me to do that. And they gave us a a nice offer in the purchase of it and something that met my goals. And I just felt like that it was time for me to let go of that and to let go of that ownership and take chips off the table, right? Like set its high and to be able to benefit from that, all of that work and all of that pain. And then which not having ownership then would allow me to pursue some personal things in a way that I wouldn't ever pursue them because of, when you own a company or work for a company, even though I'm doing almost the same thing that I was doing before, 98% of what I was doing, but thinking about what's profitability like and what happens if there's a wire fraud that puts us out of business or, like all of that stuff. And honestly, that was one other decision maker for me was that with wire fraud and all the stuff that was just happening, I'm like, man, the risk to all of this has just gone up tremendously. And for me, I just want to take chips off the table because risking with all of that, I'm not ready. I'm ready to do that. It was just right. It was the timing was crazy. Like it was crazy. It was impeccable. I never would have done it because I had turned down 3 others.
Sorry about the phone.
Yeah.
So you did it. Typically, when you make that change, people are going to require you stay with them for a certain period of time.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to me to see how long people stay with them. Sometimes it's 10 years. Sometimes it's the 2 years that they require or whatever.
I just want to speak to that though.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is why that was so important for me because what I do, and I talk, it was honestly, when we did the whole thing, the employees, I cried meeting with employees, talking to them about it because they just said, because I had this phrase, if it's best for you, then it's best for me. And they just said, I know this is best for you, so this is going to be best for me.
Yeah.
If it makes you play at a higher level, then it's going to be better for me. It's best for me. I said, it is and why I did it is because I don't need to have a big salary for what I do anymore, And so what I do here, I can always do, no matter what they pay me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then even so, what I loved about it is that I honestly can see myself here for about another 4 or 5 more years, easy daily involvement, as much as I am. And then, but it will free me up to do some stuff that, we talked about this a little prior to this, but I'm doing breathwork where I'm coaching people into that. And
so
that more. And
so I want to talk about that, Louie, because sometimes when life, like you were living life here when you were getting fired, right? And then your life went to here, and then it went to here, and you joined partnerships with Jeff. And then, you guys are up here getting all your financials in order and preparing your business so that at some point this could happen. And, and then this happens and you sell your business. And now the observation I make in life is whenever you reach another milestone, some people think like that's the end goal, but all it does is it opens up new opportunities. And here's the thing, we've all heard this from Tony Robbins, you're either growing or dying. But the reality is, if you are not improving your life and expanding your knowledge and growing, there is no coasting. You are either going up or you're going down. And so at this point, it's your choice. Okay, I hit this peak, and I've seen both. I've seen a lot of people sell their companies for a lot of money, and they either elevate at that point or they decline. They're not just going to stay flat, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've just heard, I've heard a few stories about people coming to you, doors opening. I'd love to hear a little bit more from you. We're gonna go a few more minutes here.
Okay.
Because I really want to hear just like, so you sell a company. I think you take your chips off the table. There's huge relief. You still have a desire to continue doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
But now additional doors open for you. Can you share some of just how this has happened for you?
Yeah. Well, first off, 3 years ago, it was your wife that told me to go to this breathwork with Zach Reeder. And I'm just like, what is it? She's like,
was that the one? Was that the one in Station Park at Farmington?
Yeah. I went to the one here in Sandy, but she said,
"Oh yeah, I went to the one in Station Park, and she sent you to the one in Sandy the next day." I remember that.
That is right. Yeah, and she's like, "You need to go to that." So so it's interesting is that from that journey back in 19, pursued me to learn how to do it. Right, I pursued that, kind of like went through the training of how to do that. I brought that breathwork back to my company, to my people, and it was very helpful for them. because we live in this is very stressful. There's going to be a lot of grit in real estate, a ton,
Yeah.
Super stressful. And anyway, so I just kept pursuing it, just kept pursuing the breath work. And then
why did you keep pursuing it? I mean, what was it doing for you? What did it do? You went in, I remember you went in and you responded to spring and you were like all about it, like just super passionate. Right. And I've seen that passion with you around many things, because you get to where, hey, like this is changing my life. Right. And
you saw me, and I got passionate about the one wheel. You're like, that is amazing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The one wheel. Exactly. That's another one.
Yeah. So anyway, because happiness, I realized that, and even in 2019, before this breath work, and it was so interesting when Spring told me to go do it, I realized, I would tell this to Viv all the time, I think I can remember being happy for maybe a total of an hour in the last 5 years. I mean, where I just sit and happiness is now. It's not being happy.
Yeah, where you just sit and you're full of gratitude and just so thankful for this life.
There's nothing to do right now but just sit here and just breathe. And, I'm just I'm not thinking of anything other than watching this movie. Just, this is awesome. No, that's just, anyway. So what happened, I did that breath work and it shut that noise, that monkey or whatever, the reptile, what do you call it? The lizard brain or whatever, just off. And I just
shut that off and opened something up. I'm guessing my experience was it opened me, right?
Yeah. I mean, when I finished that first time and Viv asked me what happened, my response was, I talked to God. I heard things, I just cried. It was just so mind-blowing for me. And so that practice, what happened was and I had experienced anxiety at a high level. I mean, I went through a depression and all of this. I went through a depression from June of 14 until October of 15. I went to UPW, severe.
And so for those, I mean, there are a lot of people listening today, Louie, that may not even know what breath work is. And so if you're not familiar with breath work, research it. And there are a lot of people, myself included, that have had these out of body experiences that just blow you away, right? It's incredible. You want to just write it down so you can remember these things when you get done there. So,
and it wasn't even so much about that, really about the out of body experience. I mean, that was incredible, but it was the only thing that started taking this anxiety that I would constantly feel this, just in my chest, just pulling. And I would be you're like, man, what is happening? I got to get rid of this, and hitting my chest. I feel anxious and trying to get back. And from 2019 to today, I've literally experienced anxiety one time since then. And it was intrusive for me. And that breath work just changed me. And so kind of led me to just be passionate about it and sharing about it and doing it just holding a weekly session. Even if 2 people showed up, I'm like, I don't care. I'm just holding it, And
so you immediately said, hey, I want to share this with others. I'm going to learn how to be an instructor of this.
Yeah. And again, your wife was instrumental, because I'm like, hey, he said he would charge me this much. That seems like a lot to learn something. And I don't even know if, she's like, do it. What do you? I felt like Jack and the Beanstalk.
There's no doubt.
Buy these magic beans and hopefully it works out.
Yeah, there's no doubt. If you feel like you need to do something, you need to do it. And Spring and I will both share that with you, Louie. Just go for it.
Right. Go. So, talking about grit though, is just that I would do that with my employees and it would benefit them, which encouraged me. It was very rewarding. I'm doing something that's helpful for them. So I'd come in at 6 a.m. and do it with them, or I'd stay until 8 p.m. and do it, just do it in a conference room or wherever we could find space to do it. And I just started holding a weekly class at night. Everybody, I should not just open this, everybody should be able to come and to attend this. And so I just started holding this weekly class in my Murray office. And then just for anybody to come, doesn't matter, whatever. And I just started having really good experiences and just felt this call of I need a different place to do it. And so recently I bought a cabin up at Big Cottonwood Canyon. And at the end of September, September 30th.
So this was post the sale of your business. This was after taking chips off the table, or before?
No, this is before we even decided.
Okay.
We didn't decide until end of October.
Okay.
It was just maybe let's just talk.
You found this amazing little retreat up up the canyons, right next to the ski resorts.
Yeah, right next to, yeah.
What a great place.
It was great. And just started holding practices up there. And my wife was like, we're really going to pay $1.2 million for a place that you're going to do breath work at? Like, can we afford this? Like, again, this is pre-sale. So she's like, can we afford it? Like, why are we doing this? How much will you make doing breath work? Will we be able to make the payment? Or, just all these things. I'm like, all those things don't matter because I'm supposed to do it. It doesn't matter.
It'll figure itself out.
Like, so I've just been doing it since September. And then most recently I had a lady come that was well connected with famous, people that are in the music industry and stuff. And anyway, she came and had this incredible experience and then invited me to meet her friends that, and they do these, they're like a business consultant, like a promotional consultant, and help you promote, like if you had they helped, I don't know who it was, but like a Sundance Film Festival. They're helping them promote their film and all this stuff. And anyway, I did a breathwork practice with her and she says, oh my gosh, like this has changed me and I need you to meet. And, she said to me, can you do this for 60,000 people at a time? And I'm like, 60,000 people? What are you talking about? She's like, I'm doing this event at Rice Eccles Stadium. I want you to consider like being able to do this there. And I'm like, well, we can't do what we did. She goes, stop telling me what we can't do, but we got to figure this out because we need to introduce this to people because it can change their lives. I said, I want to do it. And that led to just her introducing me to other people. And, there's a local music artist, Alex Boye, came to our practice a week ago, Monday. He had this incredible experience and called me up the next day and said, I booked the Maverick Center to do a mental health concert this summer. And he's like, and between the songs, I have these messages that I want shared, people to share certain messages in between the songs about what it feels like to go through mental health, anxiety and depression and stuff. And he goes, I want you to be sharing messages in my concert this summer. Will you do that? And he's like, this is so changing. You understand it. And anyway, it just has led to all these people that, because it's so powerful when you practice it, you realize that it's hard, you've done it. It's hard to explain, but when you practice it consistently, it quiets your mind. And, when we talk about having grit, honestly, I will tell you this, like since doing the breath work, I almost feel like I have less grit because it's quieted my mind so much. I realized I needed all this power because I was making up these stories of
now you have peace. Now you have peace.
I just have peace. I'm like, no, I get it.
Yeah.
And now I'm just, it's like, it's clarity. It's not grit. To me, grit is when I don't know, I'm just saying this for the first time, but it's like, we need grit. If we have a lot of shit in our head, you need to like get through it and then get to the end of it. But the more you get it out, you realize like, no, I don't need grit. It's just persistence. It's just clarity. It's just like, I'm going to do the hard things. And I realized like, man, it's been super powerful.
It doesn't always need to be hard, right? I mean, I guess is your message, Louie. It doesn't.
Yeah, we're making it hard.
Yeah. He's like, love it. So this is the last thing, and we'll wrap up because we're over on time. But I remember specifically a time that you shared a dream with me that you had. This is why I love my time with you, Louie, because you always you share enlightening things that I remember. And you shared a dream about. You drove past Tony Robbins. He'd moved into a neighborhood and you were like, oh, that's Tony Robbins. You backed up and you were like, and he basically said to you, you are replacing me. Right. I mean, because you had this vision of wanting to share and impact people's lives and all this stuff. And that's been your vision since I've known you.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's so exciting to see you transforming from title to what you're really passionate about, which is helping people transform and change their lives. So congratulations for that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's anything else you want to share, as a last message as we wrap up. But Louie, thank you for being here with us today. Do you have any last words that you'd want to share?
Yeah, one thing that you said, I totally forgot. I told you that dream. That's what you said. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot that I told you that. So it's just so interesting. It's like when Alex Boye called me up the next day and said, I really want you to do this. And I And I was like, really? Like, we just met yesterday. It's not even like, I looked at my watch. I'm like, it's been 22 hours. How do you know? And he said, you're like Tony Robbins to me. He's like, but you talk about Jesus. It's like, you're like Tony Robbins, but you talk about Jesus so much, He's like, that's why I want you there. And it's just kind of, it's so funny you bring that up because like that has been my dream. And I just thought, oh my gosh, he said it. He said, I want to be like him. That's it. And then I told Alex, I'm like, that's been my thing. I know I'm supposed to do this with you. Because why would you say that?
Well, when you told me that dream, I had goosebumps. I have goosebumps right now. You get that feeling of just like, it's a special moment. And it's a special moment. Like I knew back then, Louie, that at some point that would be your future. And not exactly that, but impacting lives in a massive way where, in front of these 60,000 people or 30,000 people or whatever it is, these massive groups, which I know, like, that was a passion of yours. Like I remember you coming in to speak to these small groups and real estate offices just to make a difference for 12 to 15 people. And now to see you being able to, again, elevate and have these opportunities to have that kind of impact. I'm just super excited for you. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Yeah, thank you. I love being with you today. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for being here, Louie. For all of our listeners, I know this episode had nothing to do with real estate, and I actually like that because it's really these types of things and just going deep into everybody's challenges and how they overcome those challenges. That's what makes a difference in our lives. And Louie, again, I thank you for being here today. Yeah. It's been awesome. I knew it would be. Yeah. And I'm just grateful that you're willing to spend time with people like me.
Oh yeah, thanks, Brian. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us on our podcast. If you have an interest in a free 7-day trial of Sisu, go to sisu.co, sisu.co. Make sure that you use the coupon code GRIT, that's GRIT, to waive all your setup fees and receive a 10% discount on your subscription. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast and want to subscribe, search GRIT, the Real Estate Growth Mindset, on iTunes, Spotify, or Podbean. And with that, we'll catch you next time. Take care.